that.
Yay! Well, in the Obelisk Gate, we pick up where we left off in the 5th season. Well, almost. First, we take a brief jaunt back to the beginning of the 5th season, immediately after Jija killed his and Essen's son, Uche. We discover what happened to Nasun during the first book, how she learned to manipulate her father so he didn't kill her. And we fervently wish Nasun could have gotten some therapy because, damn, she had to grow up way too quickly, and some of us know all too well what that's like. And then we jump back to where we left off, with Alabaster trying to explain what a moon is. He convinces Essun, ni Cyanite, ni Demaya, to summon an obelisk. And to do this, she needs to go to the surface, which means talking to Yika, the head of Kastrima, the underground comm they're living in. There's a bit of back and forth, and then everyone heads to the surface. Essun connects not only to the topaz obelisk that Alabaster was talking about, but also to an onyx one. And here's where things start to get really weird, because then we get to see Shafa's perspective. You remember him? It's Essun's guardian, who smiles a lot and just like kills people. Anyway, the last time we saw him, Essun was shattering the boat he was on. And apparently he survived by making a deal with the Father Earth or something. Anyway, he appears to lose most of his memories except for his name in the process. He's rescued by a sailor whose grandchild, Ates, is an Origin who begs Shafa for his protection after he realizes that Shafa is a guardian. Shafa agrees and goes to talk to his mother, but then he accidentally kills her and then takes something from her, some kind of energy, and he ends up killing the whole family for their energy, but realizes he can take just a little bit of it from the Origins without killing them. And he decides to essentially found a new fulcrum and sets out with Ates to get started. Meanwhile, Jija has heard of a comm where they can cure Origins. Since he hates them and wants to love his daughter, he sees this as the only solution for them, though let's be real, it's all about him. But on the way, they're ambushed by bandits, and Jija is harpooned. In another weird twist, it's Shafa who saves them. They go to the nearby comm, Jeketi, where Shafa has set up Found Moon, a sort of makeshift fulcrum. There are 2 other guardians there who have been changed, like Shafa, and then also some young Origins that they have collected. There, Nasun begins to grow as an Origin, and Shafa takes a special interest in her. He asks about who trained her and about her mother breaking her hand. It's just like what Shafa did to Essun when she was still Demaya. And Shafa starts to almost remember. But let's jump back to Kastrima real quick. Alabaster tells Essun where he's been for the last 10 years. Antimony, the stone eater that is always with him, the one who dragged him into the earth at the end of the first book, transported him to an island on the other side of the world. An island with dead civ tech. Amongst other things, they made obelisks there. Here's a little recap within this recap. There's a war between Father Earth and the Origins. Somehow the Origins knocked the moon out of orbit and pissed Father Earth off. And that's maybe Father Earth's kid or something. It's a little confusing. Anyway, now we have multiple factions all in conflict with each other. Father Earth has taken over some guardians. The Stone Eaters have multiple factions amongst themselves, apparently. And the Origins are mostly trying to survive and not be used as tools by, basically everyone else.
As for Nasun, the rift left between her and Jija is growing wider. His hate is horrifying, but Nasun loves him. This is impacting her studies, so Shafa insists that she leave his home and come live with them in Found Moon. But at this point, things really start piling on. First, Nasun unconsciously connects to an obelisk, has a nightmare, and accidentally turns Ates into stone when he tries to wake her up, like straight up rock. Then, Shafa takes her and one of the other guardians, Umber, to the Antarctic Fulcrum, which wasn't shut down like it was supposed to be at the start of the season. They have a conversation with the local Origin leaders who claim they should be able to continue, but Shafa ain't having that shit. He starts killing the leaders and says Nasun outside. Yep, in that order. She almost immediately runs into a girl who tries to talk to her about the fulcrum, and Nasun realizes that Essun tried to teach her using the same tactics because that was how she was taught. She decides this is wrong and turns everyone in the fulcrum to stone? Because of what she's done, Father Earth, via Umber, clearly wants to kill her. She's too powerful. But Shafa says no, even though Father Earth is also trying to make him kill Nasan. It's clearly hurting him to resist, but he does. On the way back to Found Moon, Nasan meets a Stone Eater, who she names Steel, and he shows her that she can remove Shafa's power. This would prevent Father Earth from hurting him, but Shafa doesn't want her to do it because he needs his strength and power to protect her. And also, he doesn't want to die. By the way, Shafa's like, I'm super old, and his power is keeping him alive. So Nasan is talked out of this, but she is not in a great place. And even though this clearly isn't the best of the times, she goes to visit Jija. She realizes that he will only love, in quotes, her if she gives up who she really is, which of course means that he doesn't really love her. He wants her to pretend to be normal, which is an all too familiar and painful metaphor. He hits her for implying he ever loved or cared for Isin or Uche, and for saying she doesn't want to stop being an origin. Nasan makes a decision. She ices the entire house, but only the house. She and Jija are safe, but he is terrified because he understands that Nasan could have easily killed him if she wanted to. Not to be outdone by whatever all of that was, there's quite a bit going on in Kostrima too. Tonki has been shirking her duties and apparently has found the control room for Kostrima and locked herself in. She's figuring out how the comm works and what all the dead Civ tech does. It helps that she's visited other dead Civ ruins and knows more than most people about what symbols mean and how things work. This would be incredibly useful, but she hasn't talked to anybody about any of this and broke the rules to get access. So Yika tells her she is banned from the control room. Tonki is horrified and tries to run off with a piece of dead Civ tech, which instantaneously begins burrowing into her skin and heading for her Sesapine. Isin tries to remove the thing, but accidentally cuts off Tonki's arm in the process. Thankfully, Tonki survives and starts helping out with the comm. In an interlude, we also learn what Hoa has been up to. Apparently, he is old. Very old. And he's been killing other Stone Eaters who aren't on his side or who are trying to harm Essen.
Over the next 6 months, a trading party travels to a nearby comm called Tedahi, but no one comes back. Alabaster keeps teaching Essen, who also works with some of the more skilled Origin, to train all of the Origin in Kostrima. A group of hunters are attacked by these awful things called boil bugs that straight up burrow into people's skin and boil them alive. The Kostrimans learn about an equatorial comm called Renaris that has formed an army and is coming for them. A comm meeting is held, but is interrupted by a Stone Eater carrying Hoa's arm. The Stone Eater, who Essen dubs the Gray Man, tells everyone that they are welcome to join Renaris. Well, not everyone, because the Origins aren't invited. Oh, and anyone who doesn't join will die. Essen cuts off his hand in response, but it acts on its own and returns to the Stone Eater. Her threats do seem to make him leave, though, so that's something, I guess. She can see the silver strands that connect everything flowing from Hoa's arm to her room, so she takes it there. The rest of Hoa is there, and Essen helps him reform his body, his original body, not the one he's been wearing to make Essen feel motherly towards him. Creepy. And Essen recognizes him because he's the Stone Eater from the Garnet Obelisk in Aliyah. The vote in Kostrima is coming up, but things keep going wrong. Cutter, one of the other Origin who helped Essen with the training, ices a man for attacking him or threatening to attack him. It's kind of one person's word against the other, so a mob forms and Ika has to kill Cutter to get him to get the mob to stand down. Then one of the Origin kids gets attacked and Essen loses it. She turns the attacker to stone and pushes back when Alabaster tries to stop her from the infirmary, but she's too strong now and overpowers him, which accidentally kills him. And then it's finally time for the vote, but Essen refuses to let them go through with it and tells everyone that they better just fall in line or else. She goes topside to tell Renaris off, and they admit that they need Kostrima stores and we're never going to let anyone live. Essen is distracted long enough for a guardian to attack her with a glass knife, but Hoa saves her by pulling her into the ground. The army invades Kostrima, but while they're as prepared as they can be, it's clear they're probably going to be overwhelmed. Essen and Ika link their powers together, similar to how Alabaster linked with her in the 5th season, but more natural. And the network of their powers allows Essen to see and understand so much more, and to control things. They push boil bugs at the Renaris army, causing chaos and very disgusting death. But then the Stone Eaters arrive. They are killing Origines, but once again, Hoa protects Essen. He brings her to the surface so that she can connect to the Onyx obelisk, and that's when she realizes that she can create a network of obelisks. She uses this power to trap the Stone Eaters inside geodes the way Hoa was trapped inside the Garnet. Unfortunately, the Gray Man isn't there, but she takes care of the others and then uses the power to ice the entire Radaris calm. Unfortunately, just like what was happening to Alabaster, these actions turn her arm to stone. Just before she passes out from her effort, she sees Hoa and Antimony. I don't know how to pronounce that. I always thought it was Antimony. And a new Stone Eater, Alabaster. What the what? Hoa takes her back into the calm, and while Kostrima is messed up, Hoa tells Lerna that Renaris is simply is now empty and can be used by the calm. But Essen now knows where Nassin is, and Hoa knows that as soon as she's recovered, she'll insist on going to find her daughter. Finally, we meet back up with Nassin. The Stone Eater, who she calls Steel, but who we also know as Essen's Gray Man, has returned and talks about Essen opening the Obelisk Gate. He doesn't use her name, but Nassin knows that it was her mother. In the midst of this conversation, who shows up but Jija, intent on killing his daughter once and for all. It's fucking heartbreaking when when Nassin says she wishes that he could just love her as she is, but she realizes there's no way to end his hate. She summons the Sapphire Obelisk and turns it into a sword. As he attacks, she turns Jija to stone and he shatters, but not before he manages to stab her. Steel tells Nassin that the only way to end the wrongness of the world and all of the hate is to bring the moon back into orbit. She understands that doing so will likely destroy everyone and everything, but she agrees to help him anyway. Whew. Ooh. These are so long. It's hard to stay on top of things, honestly. So I guess I'll start out by saying, like, I still like really enjoyed this book, but I thought the start of it, like, really almost like the first like 2/3 were kind of slow. Like, it was still a quick read, but it felt a little bit like some of the Temporary books where it's like nothing's happening. And then bam, all of the things happening all at once in the last, like I said, about third or so of the book.
I mean, I kind of agree with that to a certain extent. Like, it felt slower than the first book for sure, because, like, you know, a big part of it is like recapping essentially Nassin's experience during the first book. So it sort of feels like you're stagnating or not going anywhere, because, like, you're technically rehearing parts of things that have already happened, except from Nassin's POV. And yeah, so I get why it was slower. But I don't think it was ever as slow as any of the Temeraire books, because I still flew through this. Like, again, we're like a month and a half out from me reading this now, but I still like literally devoured it in like 3 days. So yeah, it was slower than the rest of the series, but the series is so epically, like, absurdly fast that it didn't feel slow objectively.
Maybe slow isn't even the right word so much as it just felt kind of bottom heavy. You know what I mean? Like, so much happening in the last, like, you know, third. I keep saying third. I think it was a little bit more than that maybe, but it definitely wasn't even half. I don't know. What do you think, Nick?
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, I was just cursing a lot. I was saying that I think it's also a different experience when you're listening to the audiobooks. I feel a lot more immersed in it during that, and especially with the sort of narrator POV. I really liked it. I really liked learning about what was going on for these other characters during that first book, because, you know, we don't get that perspective at all. We know that Nassun is out there somewhere with Jija, but we don't have any idea what's happening, why he took her, what's going on, any of that stuff. And the other part of it was like, okay, thank you again for the trigger warnings, because they're super important. And there were parts that were really hard, but it was such a well-written representation of what that situation is like that I definitely, it's hard to say that it's beautiful or anything like that, because obviously what's happening is terrible. particularly with the child abuse. But I think there's something really powerful about seeing the perspective and seeing it done really well. And as a person who grew up in a home with emotional abuse, I definitely identified a lot with that and felt myself engrossed in that narrative as a result. So I don't think it ever felt slow for me. I felt like it was a combination of the difference in it being an audiobook, kind of the way that I felt myself being drawn into it, and then also part twos in a trilogy are always going to be a little bit different in terms of structure than the first or the third part, right? Because it has to build on the world of the first part so you understand that world a little bit more, and it then also has to set up the third part. But it can't resolve too much because you still have to have the third part.
Yeah.
I think the other thing about this book is that it makes you sad in a very different way. Because, well,
mood.
The whole series makes you sad in very different ways. Great job, N.K. Jemisin. My heart is. Love it. But so, like, this book makes you sad in a very different way because this whole story up until now has been about Eason growing up and learning to cope with this world. But for Nasan, like, she isn't grown yet. This story, while it is, short, it covers 2 whole years of her trying to survive with somebody who should be her protector, but who has completely turned against her. And it is, like, as Nick says, it's horrifying, but it is also so well written that you can see into her psyche. Like, just, it's so incredibly compellingly done and well written, and it made me heartbroken, but I really loved it. Just every single moment when Nasan has to stop and she can't just be a kid and she has to calculate how she's going to respond to her father and what affection she's going to give him in order to lessen his violence towards her. It is heartbreaking and like terrifying to see that a child has to be that analytical in order to survive. But it also, like, it puts you into, like, the shoes of somebody facing that abuse in a way that somebody who hasn't, thankfully, I am lucky to say that I had a great time as a kid. But it really puts you into the shoes of somebody who does experience that. And, they say it's always said that, like, when somebody experiences abuse at a young age, it makes you grow up faster. And you can see Nasan growing up in front of your eyes here. And it is heartbreaking to watch. And
it really is.
Yeah, a lot of, quite often I found myself forgetting how young she actually was. And then every once in a great while, they would mention her age, and it's like, oh yeah, she's only 10, because it seems, not way, way older, but I'm, I got into this mindset that maybe she's like, 13, 14, 15. And no, she's not. She's still just like 10.
I want to maybe 12 by the end, but even that is like possibly pushing it. And like, I think the biggest thing is that, like, you see her like forced adultness in how she is like forced to be analytic in these situations, but then you also see how she is really a child and how she just wants like somebody to be able to attach onto, like she does with Shafa. And thankfully Shafa's not a piece of shit to her like he was with Essen, because good for memory loss, I guess. Not sure how I feel about this, but when I told you but when I told you that you'd actually have a surprise character you'd start to care about this book, I meant Shafa, because bitch was alive and now he's adopted Nasan and he's being much better about it than Jaja. So I guess I'm kind of not against him. But like, so like you see the way that Nasan is like so easily influenced in her ideas and her worldview and all of that, because like this book, more than it being Essen's journey, because Essen is pretty stationary and just like learning in this story, this book is way more about Nasan and her journey and how she is forced to grow up and forced to realize that the world is cruel, and then realize that there is a way that she could fix this, but realize that she doesn't want to because she doesn't think the world deserves it. And that is...
Yep.
Yeah, that whole journey is just so mind-blowingly well done. It's so good and it's so bad. Like, it's so bad that she comes to those conclusions, but it is so well done and it breaks your heart. And I just want to take Nasa and squish her little cheeks to keep her safe and teach her how to earthbend. Story.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree. Like this book is definitely more about her journey than Essence. I mean, you can see that just in the fact that, you know, a lot of what's going on in Kostrima is just truncated. You know, it's summarized into, you know, that like 6 months are passing and this is what happened briefly, bit by bit, you know? So I do think that this is definitely more about exploring what is going on. I mean, even I think one of the things I had noted in, you know, in our document was like just Alabaster, the training is just, it just kind of like she just kind of has, like spends all this time training with him. We're told months and months, but it seems like his training, like we only get bits and pieces of it, and it barely even seeds the epiphanies that she kind of has on her own. And then he just dies sort of anticlimactically. You know, she mistakenly kills him. He dies off page. So it's like the fact that we've got this major thing that's supposedly going on, like Alabaster's training of her should be so important, but it's hardly even mentioned more than in passing. Yeah. And again, like he is this all important character from book one dies off page. It is just kind of cements the fact that whatever's going on in Kostrima isn't really that important compared to what we are learning from, you know, about Nassan, about Shafa, I think, especially whether it's through his one little kind of chapter or through Nassan's point of view as she experiences, you know, this new Shafa. And yeah, I agree, Nami. It was like, I'm not supposed to feel bad for this guy or like him. He was horrible in the first book, but like he was basically being mind controlled, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really know how to feel or what to think.
I don't know. Yeah, but actually this is funny. It sounds like this is going to be the Nami and Tara disagree episode because because I thought that Alabaster's like off-screen death by her hands was actually like a complete shock and upset from what I thought was going to happen. Because, like, the whole book he's turning into stone. And, like, Antimony's eating him. So, like, you expect he's going to die. You expect he's going to, like, you're like, this man's dying. Isen's going to see it. And then she's going to watch a stone eater eat her buddy. But then instead, Isen kills him. And I'm like, oh, geez. And it's just, like the level.
It wasn't that it wasn't surprising. Let me be clear. It was just more that I felt like it was... He just dies and she goes and finds him sort of as is. That seemed kind of anticlimactic to me. Not surprising, just anticlimactic.
I don't know. To that, I kind of found it like the opposite of anticlimactic. I thought it was like the upset of what would have been an anticlimactic death, which would have been him just turning into stone and dying like naturally, and like the fact that she accidentally ends up killing him was like, oh shit.
Also, it kind of brings to mind the whole George R.R. Martin thing. Like, if they die off page, are they really dead? Because in the end, as we find out, he's not really dead.
Well, he isn't a person. And I think like
he is transmuted.
Yeah.
But is he a person? Because Hoa has a whole thing about whether or not Stone Eaters are humans. So, just saying.
A human does not mean a person in this case. In this specific case, I'm using the word person to refer to as people and or beings with human-like abilities of braining. So by this standards, mind controlling ground is also possibly a person. Unclear. Yeah, so it's definitely like he is not human anymore, but he is like still there. And like I thought that reveal at the end was like, I thought that was the climactic like gut punch ending that like Alabaster, that I like, like this was not like being like Alabaster is unimportant. This was being like Alabaster is the first dude to just straight up become a Stone Eater. Like, look at him go.
Based on the series.
Based on the series. Based off of our knowledge, this is the first time this has happened, and like, holy shit.
Well, I think that's how all Stone Eaters become into theory. Existence.
I'm not going to theorize because I did not have time to theorize because I put this book down and I immediately put the third audiobook on and I was like, tell me the
answers. And I'm actually kind of in between y'all because I wish that there had been a little bit more in the struggle where, Essun is, exerting this will and, ultimately killing this person. And Alabaster tries to use his powers to stop her, and she overpowers him. And it's skipped over that with like one or two lines. And maybe it was like the audiobook version.
No, it was really quick.
But it was really quick, and I would have loved, even if it was just like another one or two lines, to talk about that struggle and her just like forcing through him, and then not realizing that is what, I mean, she does realize that that's what killed him, but tie that little tie of a piece to say, you remember how the rest of this book we've been talking about how every time he exerts himself he turns a little bit more into stone. The fact that she not only forced herself past him but like did it in a very destructive way. I don't know, I wish there was just like one little moment there that showed that.
I get that desire a lot because like that was definitely missing. To me though, the lack of struggle just emphasized further how absolutely weak
that's a good point
was. And like I understand wanting that struggle, but I think the whole point of the lack of it was that he could not. Like she was just so beyond where his current power level was. Like she is a 10-ringer now. Like he turning into stone, losing himself, like not having the ability to do anything. He's like a torso and a head at this point. Like he does not have the ability to stop her. And even like the way I read it was that like even that small exertion of him trying to stop her started turning him to stone more, and then she pushed past him and like accelerated it. That's how I kind of interpreted it. So like the lack of struggle was like she was just so overwhelming.
She specifically has a line in there, if I recall correctly, that she says, it's not that he has gotten weaker. He's still as strong as Alabaster always has been. Even as the stone is taking him over, he's still incredibly powerful and at the same power level. It's that she's now surpassed him and is more powerful than he is.
Yeah.
So he can't stop her because she is so deliberate in this is going to happen, even though she doesn't really understand what it is that she's doing in that moment.
Okay, that's a good point. I had forgotten that. So Eason's what, like 11 rings, 12 rings? Not enough rings, too many rings.
Who knows? Because there were other parts where they talked about how, at that point in the books, and I don't even remember when in the books it happened, but I remember them saying that like Alabaster is probably more than a 10-ringer, but they don't have anything beyond a 10-ringer. Yeah. So he's just a 10-ringer. So now whatever he was at, Essun has surpassed. And presumably Nasun is also somewhere in that same range because she's exerting powers equal to or perhaps even greater than her mother. So it's bananas up in here.
I would say that you can't even count what she's doing as like rings because it's so different from what they ever would have taught her in the fulcrum. It's like if they're not wearing rings, maybe she's wearing like bracelets. I don't know. Getting tattoos. It's something where she is like she's very clearly like super powerful. And on top of that, like, it seems very clear that she has, that Essen had so much natural talent when she, was so young and untrained, and Nassan has more.
Yeah.
Like at her age, she was, and I think, I'm pretty sure, I want to say they say like Essen makes like some comments about it, where I hope I'm not, because I did start reading the third book, so this might be from the very beginning of that, but there's definitely some thoughts in Essen's head where she knew how powerful her daughter was.
Yeah. I definitely remember that as well.
And she knew that even earlier on in the series.
Yeah.
She knew that Nasun had more potential than she did, and she knew that Uche had even more potential than Nasun did.
Yeah. Which is crazy because they both came from the same bloodline. So like, and I think this implies that Nasan and therefore Uche also had more power than Koru had.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how
I wouldn't know that
happen?
I wouldn't know that I necessarily agree with the had more power than Koru, just because we never like actually. She doesn't speak about them in the same space, in the same terms, in terms of like their powers. And I think that that's a parallel that we can't draw based off of the information that she gives us, mostly because like we really don't have a baseline of how powerful Koru is, except it was like, he's really fucking powerful and he will be one day. That's it. Yeah. But like, you only see him at 2 years old, and even Uche is like 6. Right. So
no.
Like
he
3.
He was 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was a baby.
He's like still older though than Koru, and yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure we can make that assumption, but yeah, Uche is definitely the strongest. We don't know that Koru would not have been that strong, or at least as strong as Nasun, but
Uche, like. Oh my gosh, even just the little note that Nasun has about realizing that even at like 2 or 3 years old, Uche was understanding the obelisks. Mm-hmm. Like, that was so cool. And the thing that made me clap earlier was I loved when Esun and Ike were connecting, and she acknowledges that like, her whole perspective on Ika was like completely wrong because she has all this power and understanding. It's just not shaped by the fulcrum. And Esun has that moment of realizing like, wait, I can't, there's like a little lovely, like overcoming your classist assumptions kind of thing in there about like, oh, maybe just because she's not book smart doesn't mean that she doesn't know what the fuck's up.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole thing with them, joining their power together, like, and how Ika had this just beautiful understanding of what it was and how to do it, and was better at it than Alabaster was, and they were able to work together versus like just taking, like just one overpowering the other forcefully. It was really. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, like, it was just Ika wasn't fulcrum trained. That doesn't mean she had no training. She just didn't have maybe like a modern day.
She had DIY training.
She said
I was gonna say like a modern day. It's not exactly, but it would be like somebody going to university, and getting like a master's versus somebody getting like crazy difficult certifications and like welding and shit. You know what I mean? Like, you're learning different stuff, or you're learning life skills in different ways, and that doesn't mean necessarily that one thing is better than the other. They're useful in different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And both are apparently necessary. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I really liked how, like, Essen's like moment of like, aha, came from like literally from like watching Ika, and how like it was that moment when she realized that she could still learn from other people that she didn't think were better than her. was the moment where she was able to learn it was the moment where she was able to figure out what she needed to figure out. And I was just like, yes, we can always learn from other people. Just like loving that message in there.
Mm-hmm.
But like, this also sort of brings me back to like the other like system of power that we're introduced to. So like we're introduced to like life magic, essentially, was how I was thinking about it, or like just like the silver energy of life, and like how Nasen can just like instinctively reach it and use it, but how like Easton needs to like actively train herself to see it because it's been trained out of her by the Fulcrum, because the Fulcrum doesn't want you to do that or something. I don't know, man. It's just like
one of the things I saw online was like somebody comparing the idea of this magic and the way it's described in this book as being like the midichlorian thing from Star Wars. But like they're trying to find like a scientific explanation for this magic, despite the fact that they use the term magic that, that we think of as, it's not a scientific thing. And they were asking like, does this make this series more sci-fi, or are we just, because they're using the term magic, going to say it's fantasy? Also, I did like the idea, or the comparison to like the midichlorian thing. Like, love or hate the midichlorian stuff that came out with the prequels. Unfortunately, in my mind, it is Star Wars canon, and I did think it was kind of probably the best like comparison to like a major property that we all know, because it calling it magic did seem odd because it's flowing through people's bodies, I guess, and it's like a physical.
So I think the thing that so two things. One, I think the series has always been kind of sci-fi.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Because of the like lost civ technology, and whenever you have like mysterious civilization that died off and now we're doing a thing, it's always a little bit of like sci-fi. It's always a bit of like it's called like climate change sci-fi, so cli-fi is what it's called. So it's always like had the sci-fi vibes already there. And then if anything, to me, this sort of stabilized like orogeny as like the sciencier one versus the magic, which was the esoteric thing that you don't understand, that's just life force, and like like why, like, because like when you think about it in terms of Fulcrum training, whenever they've talked about orogeny, whenever they've talked about origins and their powers, it's always been like very structured, very scientific, very like rock. Ha ha. I'm hilarious. But like it's always been like very, very like solid and structured. And then you come to this magic stuff and it's like, and it's a lot more like woo woo esoteric. And so if anything, I think the magic is pulling it back more into fantasy, because even though like even without calling it like magic, it's like the silver energy, like it feels like chakra or chi or something like natural like that. And it also like the midichlorians is the best like fantasy parallel, but it also like doesn't quite fit that way either, because it's not like certain people have more or less midichlorians, like or more or less magic. Like all living things have that magic, and like it's just like other people can harness the magic and make it do things, and not everybody can do that. But the magic itself is like the magic of the force of life. So like the way that I read it was like they called it magic, but in my mind I was reading it as that mysterious thing that makes living things living. Like,
yep, I agree. And to me, like orogeny was trying to create a science to contain that concept. So to me, it's almost the reverse. Like the magic is still magic. Like no one understands it. It's just all these things that are connected, and you can kind of try to influence it and work with it, but it's not, there are no strict rules or anything like that. And it's orogeny, and particularly the ways that the Fulcrum trained orogeny that are like trying to stamp some kind of science onto that for, well, this is how this works, but it's not how it works. You can't fully explain how magic works. there's a part of it that just is. So that's how I kind of saw it.
Well, and I mean, they also mentioned that there were, it was Nita, is that her name? One of the two other guardians at the at Found Moon. Like, I believe it's her that mentions that some children that came to them had these additional like skills and powers, and like most of the time they tried to kind of learn it out of the kids, but like if somebody really had that talent and they thought that they could shape them, they would let them go on, in that manner. The way she talks about it is very like she's kind of she's very spotty in what she's saying, because as we know, she's kind of lost half of her mind, but she makes it very clear that some people have, like Nassin, more of this connection to the magic necessarily than they do to what we know as like the basic orogeny. And like, yeah. And when they thought it could do some good, or when they thought they could do something with it, they did encourage it to a certain point. Now I got the feeling that certain point, they often met a point and then those kids probably disappeared. But
yeah, I very much read that as they would encourage the ability until the child lost control, and then they would become the perfect node maintainer.
Yeah. Or I mean, Alabaster clearly had some of this ability and he hit it,
but it was
well enough,
like, perfect control. So it was like they would like, encourage this ability to a certain point, but if they couldn't control it, or if they couldn't science it out of you, or if they attempted to science it out of you and then you couldn't also control it, it's to the node, babe. Wow, I hated that. I don't say that. That was terrible. Can we just have a refund on that? Hate that.
Sometimes your jokes pay off, Nami, and sometimes they just don't.
I think in order to fully appreciate my comedic value, we do need a joke like that every now and then that just falls so flat that everybody's like, ooh.
But that just makes the ones that land that much better.
Aw, please. I'm doing my funny best.
So another thing, and this is a little bit dark, but we've kind of been talking a little bit about the people, the origins who have the powers that Nassin clearly has been able to foster or whatever. So she turns eights, whatever, into stone, mistakenly. And, she freaks out. Like she's having a horrible nightmare and she does it automatically, like in her sleep or as she's waking up. And she's freaked out about this, obviously. And some of that, a lot of that, maybe all of it is because he's her friend, like he's a good person. And also she has a little bit of a crush on him. But yeah. I mean, it was very like, almost like a little girl has a crush on their older brother's best friend sort of thing, but
very wee bab energy.
Yeah. But then like very soon after that, Shafa takes her to the Antarctic Fulcrum and she turns like everybody that Shafa and the other Guardians don't kill, she turns to stone and is just like, she does it on purpose. Which like, it fits with the theme of like showing how someone can connect with like a person or people, but also like dehumanize like others. But it's still really like that this child goes, what she does to her father, that was self-preservation, pure and simple. And that's and she's upset about that too. Even though it was self-preservation, she didn't want to do it, and she was upset about it afterward. And and again, she was upset about Eitz, and it's like, is it just because she knew and cared about these people, or like is there something is there something deeper there? Because I feel like these are just kids, like
I think this was like an important turning point and an important thing that she did for a few reasons. So one, her killing Jija out of self-preservation and still feeling sad about it was a lot of, you can love somebody who does evil things and still feel sad if they're not there.
Yeah.
And, all of that. And like her accidentally killing a friend, like, of course she would identify with that. But, the moment at Found Moon when she decides to kill all these people, it's one of her more childish moments. Yep. In truth, it is because, what essentially happens there is she listens to Shafa and this other guardian basically like kill these people there and be like, they're not following the rules. They're not being good. And she goes outside and she hears this girl talk about how the Fulcrum has trained her. And she's like, this is bad. All of this is bad. It should not exist. And that's why she ends it.
And not just that, because it also triggers her, right? Like one of the things that happens in that moment is she realizes that what her mother did to her, which she has always seen as her mother abusing her, was done to her mother. That's how she learned it. That's why she did what she did to Nasun. And
cycle of abuse.
That like this whole system is wrong, to use her words. She said this was wrong. And those of us who have experienced trauma and have experienced a trigger that really like puts you back into that space, like it literally takes you to the amygdala. It takes you to your most like primal fight or flight instincts. For her, my read of this was 100% her fight instinct got kicked in and she just tore that shit down.
Yeah.
Which is funny because like I tend to react to traumatic things more like Essen did in like the first like half of the season where I just disassociate.
Yep.
So
that's me too, but I know that some people have a reaction.
Yeah, it was like really, interesting to see like the trauma response of mother and daughter and how different it is. But, like her drawing very black and white conclusions about the world and about this is not good. And therefore, every person that participates in it is not good and needs to die was very much like that trauma response, that instinct, that like return to like her mother breaking her hand. And I think the thing that, we as readers can obviously see is like, well, these people are also like all the origins are like prisoners of the Guardians. Like they went through what she did. They're very much victims of the system as well. But to her, they're compliant in the system that made her mother, in the system that made her. And therefore their compliance is evil. And that very black and white conclusion is like that very reason I'm saying that you see Nasun's childishness emerge. You do see her childlike reasoning and her inability to see the nuance. When you're a kid, if you see, everybody in this group participating, whether it's voluntary or not, like it's like they're all a part of this. They did something evil. Every person is evil, and like her very immediate reaction. And as readers, we're like, oh my God, baby girl, no. But like to her, she is baby. Like the world is black and white. And, despite all of her maturity in surviving her father up until this point and her ability to see nuance and behave in a nuanced way to stay alive, like you do see that she is still mostly a child in every way. And that was like one of the saddest and most compelling things. Jesus, everything that happens in this book is, quote by Dobby, the saddest and most compelling thing. But
it is. It is.
It was just so well done and it made me so sad.
And, one of the things that there's this thread that goes, it goes throughout the book for Nasun, but like, since we're talking about this specific moment, that goes from this to her meeting Steel and learning that she can remove the silver from Shafa and wanting to help him partially because he's hurt, but also because she wants to remove the wrongness from him. And when he declines, she says, like, in her internal monologue, she's like, I need to distance myself physically from him right now. And that's what takes her back to Jija, which then ultimately leads to the conflict at the end of the book, where Jija tries to kill her and she ultimately kills him, which then leads to the third book, because that's where she feels like, well, there's no good left in the world. Because she can't, Shafa is still her Shafa, and she knows that he'll love her no matter what, but there will always be hurt. There will always be this like childlike, to your point, Nami, this childlike black and white thinking of like, there will always be pain unless I end all pain.
Well, right. And I mean, you're saying like how she feels about Shafa and how good he is to her. She knows he is in physical pain, and that she wants to end it. She can end it, but he doesn't want her to, because then he can't protect her. And then he also will, die probably very soon, because he'll start the gist that I got, he's kind of vague about it, but the gist that I got was like, if that piece is removed, he will, like, he's already very old, so he'll age very quickly and not live very long. And also he, even without the aging, he wouldn't have the powers to protect her anyway. So it's like she sees like that Shafa is in pain and she wants to remove that pain, but she also can't, because then she loses him anyway, way faster than she would otherwise. So it's it's all
NK Jemisin, man. And
there's
the crazy thing to me
so
is
many other series, and I'm like, now I think I need to read like everything else.
Yeah.
I literally have I have like her, I think it's the 10,000 Kingdoms series. I have the first book on loan from the library, and I just haven't been able to pick it up yet, because I'm like, is this going to emotionally destroy me? It's probably going to emotionally destroy me, right? Like, I'm ready to cry. Let's go.
Absolutely, yes.
And one thing I did want to mention real quick before I forget about it is, and I'm sad that Jonathan isn't with us this evening. He had some family stuff he had to deal with, but like, we know that he didn't really love the second person stuff in book one, but he did say that he had been enjoying this book quite a bit. And one of the quotes I had, noted was from Hoa, from one of his little interlude chapters that says, or maybe it might be like it's like shoved in the beginning of an Essen chapter. I can't quite remember, but it says, he says, I want to keep telling you that, or I want to keep telling this as I have, in your mind, in your voice, telling you what to think and know. Do you find this rude? It is, I admit, selfish. When I speak just as myself, it's difficult to feel like part of you. It's lonelier. And like, I feel like that was just such a, like, that was how I felt in the first book, really, with the second person. But I think that if you don't love second person narrative, which again, I totally understand if you're not a person who loves that, I think like seeing that bit just makes it kind of like, even if you don't love it, you just kind of got to get it a little bit more.
You're like,
I think
hey.
Hey!
the whole setup that is revealed in this book of like Hoa essentially being the narrator and like telling the story as you, and then being like, I'll go visit your daughter because you care about her. I have to talk about Shafa because you care about him. And all of like, just like the nuance from that, and how like Hoa's narrative voice becomes another character in this, which was something I really wasn't expecting, and which was so cool, because like I've never seen the you voice and I voice and third person voice used in multiple perspectives like this, to have it convey somebody telling somebody else's story within a story. And it was so cool. It's so neat. I just love
storytelling like this might exist in other books, but I've read a lot of fucking books, especially sci-fi and fantasy, and I've never, this seems like she's almost created a new storytelling mechanism and a new genre, like all in her own. And honestly, that's probably why these books, all three of them, won back-to-back Hugo-awards.
I want to try to write something like, not like this, obviously. I don't think I could write this much trauma and be able to exist with myself as a person with brain powers, but I want to like try to write something like with this narrative style of like the I, you, and the like the I perspective being like the overarching narrator and the you being the protagonist, but like as the narrator telling the story of the protagonist, they're also in as a third party. Just oh my God, all of it. It's just so timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, and I love it. And my Doctor Who is showing, but I have to put it out there.
And yet as much as it is all of that, it's also woven together pretty masterfully. I mean,
that's the piece that does it for me. Like the weaving it together. I think anybody conceptually could write the format that we're talking about. Right? But like the way that she weaves everything together and the way that it feels like there's all these through lines that are just so well thought out and pieced together, and the authenticity of the way she writes trauma, and like it's just like it's fucking chef's kiss.
And hey, I got some news for you. The narration format, it comes back and it shines even more in book 3. It's like
I'm so excited.
Chef's kiss.
I've had my work-life balance has been off for a while now. And so I like literally finished the book today and wrote the summary like as fast as I could so that we could have it as early on in the day as possible.
Full disclosure, sorry.
By the way, like I kept typing you and then having to go back and like write Essun and write like she, her instead, because I was in that mindset, because I had been like, I literally was like just listening to this thing. But I'm so excited to start the 3rd book. I can't wait.
Full disclosure, I am probably going to re-listen to this book really fast within the next week and write a summary of it, just because like book 3, y'all thought shit was wild. Just you wait. Just you wait.
Just you wait.
Picked up on that because that was exactly what I wanted to do, but I also don't have like the voice energy to sing. But like
I understand.
One of the things that I want to point this out because I don't agree with it. But I saw a quote from somebody on Goodreads that was saying like, I'm at the point in these books where like I assume everyone's a sociopath to some degree, with like maybe the exception of Inon. And like I was like, I mean,
it's like, excuse me, how dare you come in and tell people who have been damaged by trauma that they are sociopaths? Like, the people inflicting the trauma are the sociopaths. Yeah. These are damaged people. Like, shut the fuck up, dude.
And as we see with Shafa, honestly, you would have assumed that he was like that way, but then you find out that he's like basically being mind controlled. And it's like, and now it's like he's fighting against that control, like regaining power. And it's like, so there is a person under there that is caring and, so many things that doesn't make anything that he did right or whatever. But also like, this isn't the real world where, I guess I don't know. I'm kind of like reminded of like something like Clockwork Orange, where they basically, like,
if you're listening, I just like open my eyes with my
oh God, I hate Clockwork Orange so much. Ugh. It was very eye-opening to see, I think out of any of this, the one that worries me the most is Hoa, because like he like found this attachment. He created this attachment to Essen for himself because she paid attention to him, I guess is the best way to, like, she was kind to him. Like she asked him if he was okay or something like that when he was stuck in the Garnet Obelisk, and now he's using, like, he admits over and over again that he's using her, and like he loves her, but also like he tricked her, he tricked her into this motherly affection for him. So he's the one that I like. It's like, he's the one I worry about the most in terms of. But he's also a stone eater. I don't know.
Yeah, like Hoa has sociopathic tendencies, but Hoa aside, like sociopath, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Like,
oh, and let me be clear, like I'm not using that word. I am quoting somebody else.
Oh yeah, no. Very good that you started that off with a disclaimer of I don't believe this, because we would have continued the saga of Nami being like, I don't agree with you today, Tara.
no, like when I read that, I was like, do a lot of these characters do bad things? Yes, but also like this is also, I mean, this is basically like the TV show Survivor times a million, you know? Like,
yeah, it's like
those people do bad things too, but they're like real people with real lives. Like, what happens to those people when they, like, who were those people before Survivor? They probably weren't great. And like, then they go, you know what I mean? Like, this isn't that. This isn't a TV show.
It's like, also like that's not what sociopath means. Like,
this is real life. This isn't just a fantasy.
Like first off, that's not what sociopath means. Right. And like second off, like first off, like if why did I go back to first? I don't know. I'm doing my best. It's not
55th off.
Doing this again. Like, we are very used to reading fantasy stories when people die and it doesn't matter, or like the heroes kill and it doesn't matter. So just being like, oh no, our main character killed a lot of people, she's a sociopath. Like, excuse me, sir? Like, I'm sure you've read Lord of the Rings. Is Aragorn a sociopath to you? Like, come at me, boy. It's just because she's a brown woman. Am I assuming the gender of this reviewer? Absolutely, yes. It's a cis white man.
I don't even know so much, because they were saying literally everyone except Inan. So
exactly. And that, like, hey buddy, that's sociopath behavior.
Yeah. I mean, again, like assuming everyone except Inan, I was like, wait, so he was a fucking pirate. He like has killed how many?
This comment has made me tilted. I have not been tilted since my Overwatch days. Look what you've done, Goodreads, for me, Look what you've done.
Well, was it, to be fair, it wasn't a review. It was like a discussion on Goodreads where I was like looking for I was actually just looking for, discussion questions, because I feel like a lot of times when you can find a really proper like discussion question, like blog or something, it can lead to some really good points. Which is what I did with the first book. But with this one, it was really difficult. I kept like stumbling into, like, I searched very specifically for Obelisk Gate, but kept stumbling into like, but this is actually for Stone Sky, and being like, no, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it.
Don't tell me them.
So yeah, I guess like, again, like I think another point just to kind of really like drive home is everything Nassan went through, where like it's wrong to hurt someone you love. It's wrong. It's always been wrong. And like, then she has that question later where she says, if I hurt him because I love him, is that still hurt? If I hurt him now, so that like a lot now, so he'll hurt less later, like, does that make me a bad person? There's just a lot of like depth to what is going on with her in this book. And some of that also comes from what we know of Shafa previously versus what we know now. And yeah, the Nassan Shafa story really, like, it really hit me where it like hurts a little bit. Like, not that I had like a dad who didn't love me necessarily, but like I remember getting to a point in my teenage years where I was no longer the person that my father like wanted or expected me to be. And
fucking mood.
A bit of a happier note regarding the Nassan Shafa relationship. It hit me right in the redemption arc feels, this wasn't as a cut clean, perfect redemption arc as, the outstanding Avatar: The Last Airbender Zuko, but this was a very well done redemption arc in the way that, like, unintentionally, intentionally, Shafa is, trying to raise Nasan as he didn't raise Essen.
Mm-hmm.
And, every time he's reminded of Essen or the other origins that he raised, he's like, I have to do better by Nasan. And that was just like,
well, because it's not, he doesn't even really remember Essen specifically at first. It's really about, I know I did bad and now I have to do better.
And it's like very obvious, like as time goes on, that he has like hyperfixated on Essen and he does remember her specifically, but like it's just very like compelling that like, his sort of redemption to Essen, his way of like trying to fix things to Essen without even realizing it, is to take care of her daughter when she can't protect her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, like I said, when I was reading when we were talking about book 1, you start to care about Shafa and you root for Shafa in this book. And that was something that I had not thought I would ever do after the first book. And like going into his head and going into the head of like somebody who knew they've done terrible things in the past and was very actively trying not to repeat those mistakes was also a very different and interesting thing. And it was like, it was very good. He's up there now in my redemption arcs. Let's be fair. The redemption arc list before was Zuko, and now it is Zuko and then Shafa. There are 2
Well, I feel like, and in real life, like most people who turn out to be good people have some sort of redemption arc. Like somebody who was mean to their peers in high school might learn better as they get older, right?
Spoiler, this is about Dobby.
Well, that I mean, like just saying, like
about everybody, but like
for me specifically, it was being like it was like more like relationship stuff, like being a more patient person. Like my first long-term relationship taught me to be a more patient person. It because I'm still not entirely, but I'm way more now than I used to be. It's and I think also we have to kind of say that Shafa did have like an abusive life beginning. Just because he was technically an adult when a lot of these things happened, he was still being controlled by something other than himself, which is more of like a child or youth like state. So when he when he is separated from that control to an extent, he learns to, because he learns to control himself. Bless you. He learns to control himself because he still has some of those, needs really to take the energy from others and everything. But he learned, like he makes that one mistake with Aitz's family, and then he kind of like he learns that he can't do that, like so yeah, it's very oh gosh, yeah. Calling like all of these characters are sociopaths is just like mind-boggling to me, because like
there's like
just because they make mistakes doesn't mean they're all assholes, okay?
Also, just because they do bad things doesn't mean that they're a sociopath. Like a sociopath is a very different thing. Again, you keep using that word. I do not think it means. And like, we've spent a lot of this like talking mostly about Nasan, and I wanted to shift back real quick to Essen, because you know me, I mostly don't care about quotes, but every now and then I find the one and I'm like, oof. And this is specifically because, the ending arc for Kastrima is basically, they were living in harmony until somebody came and said, hey, if you kill half your population, the other half gets to live. And they were given like the ultimate ultimatum there. And obviously people started fighting because the human instinct is, when you can save yourself, why wouldn't you? And, that moment where Essen steps in and she's like, oh, hell no, this isn't happening. I'm too powerful. Listen to me. And just like, also like the ultimate payoff of being like, Renanis was never going to keep them anyway. Like It was all just manipulation. That was just like very, very good, because I was like, it was once again a parallel to the real world of like, like the structures in power pit you against other people because they know you are very eager to other like groups that aren't like you, in the hopes that you and the people like you will get something and like be able to live better, you know? And it's like, that was very like, that whole struggle just really had me in my like, you know, feels about like class and race in real life. And then there's that moment where Nathan gets up and she says, and she like basically gives everybody an ultimatum, and she's like, you can leave, but if you stay, no part of this comm gets to decide that any other part of this comm is expendable. No voting on who gets to be people. And that just tiny wailing groan. Just, I literally wrote it down in another book because that quote just like hit me so much in the like you don't get to decide like that, like what human beings are.
Yeah, you don't get to decide who lives and who dies.
Like,
like
yeah, that's it. I don't have any other things to add. N.K. Jemisin did it. She wrote down the words. The words are correct. Listen to the words. No voting on who gets to be people. She said it, folks. That's it.
I'm trying to remember where I got that quote from. You don't get to decide who lives or who dies, or who lives and who dies. I feel like it might have been from the 100, but I'm sure
who
it
lives,
came.
Who dies, who shares your story.
Yeah, I feel like it might have come from probably God knows how many other things also. But all right. Well, I mean, I can just being, I think I'm actually, now that I really think, I think I'm about halfway through the last book. So like,
it was from the 100. Sorry.
It was from the 100. Okay.
Like,
why did I know that weirdly?
Impressive.
Weirdly. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know,
like,
right?
You know, I think the thing that got me about that was like, even more than like who lives and who dies, it's not a matter of like choosing that a person gets to live and die. It's a matter of you don't get to tell a person that they're not a person. You know, like even more than that. N.K. Jemisin was like, yes, the 100, this is a good point. Let me make it better. And she did.
Yes, she is very good at this. And I'll be honest, like, I don't find this series insanely quotable. That's not a bad thing. That's just a kind of an observation that I've made as I've read along. But the thing is, like, it doesn't need to be quotable to make its own really good points. And maybe also some of the reasons why I don't find it super quotable is because, listen, like, I am not a part of like a people who is, oh my God, I'm blanking on the word. I'm a white girl, man. Like, I'm a woman. So that makes me, you know, like lesser than like, you know, cishet white men. But like, I'm not a person of color. So I don't have the experiences that are really portrayed in these books, because they are very clearly, you know, reminiscent of like just like current society. There's a lot of what we've seen in the past several years that is in these books, and yeah, it's just, but it's, you know, none of it, she just is so masterful at all of it.
It's,
like,
you know, I think there was something that I was thinking about earlier with these books, and you're right, they're not very quotable, but that doesn't make them any less poignant. Like, you don't need to say your point profoundly and concisely. And she doesn't really bother with that. She is very comfortable with taking her entire story and taking her story at the pace it is, and, you know, trusting her readers a little bit, but also like giving you the moments of understanding, giving you these experiences in such a way that you can really get it. You know, like there's nothing really quotable like in Nassen's story where, you know, she is growing up and realizing she has to manipulate her father and also in order to survive, but also that she is retaining her childlike innocence in the way of being black and white. You know, there's like no single quote to do that, to like convey that idea. But her writing doesn't like, it doesn't hesitate away from complex ideals, because complex things cannot usually be summarized in one quotable sentence.
Yeah.
And she's like very not afraid of that. She's very much like, you know what, screw it. I don't have to be quotable. I'm going to take this entire book to make my point, and you're going to read it, and you're going to get it, and you're going to love it, and you're going to cry.
Yep.
And on that note. All right. Any last thoughts?
Can't wait for you guys to get to finish book 3.
Yeah.
I'm
So
hype.
Holy
so we'll be back in 2 weeks, which is Wednesday, July 21st, to cover The Stone Sky. That's what it's called, right? Stone Sky. I'm like,
Yes.
shoot, it's Stone something. It's Stone Sky. I'm really bad at this. Hopefully Jonathan will be able to join us, because like I said, it seems like he's been enjoying this book a lot more than he enjoyed the first book. Not that he disliked it, but I think it does take a little bit of getting used to in terms of the storytelling aspect, you know, the way she tells her story. So hopefully Jonathan will be able to join us in 2 weeks. And on that note, once again, I'm Tara, along with Nick and Nami. Thank you for joining us for Sagas and Sass, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.